archaeological visitors, esteemed timekeepers, my worthy yet respected opponents, my darling teammates and respected members of the floor. I, as the Prime Minister from the government, strongly agree with our motion for today, which is this House will ban tourism at sites considered sacred by locals. I, as the Prime Minister, will present one argument on how this is so. My Deputy Prime Minister will give two arguments that will surely prove the authenticity and logicality of proposing such a motion. And my Education Minister will, without a shadow of doubt, refute all the weak points proposed by the opposition and absolutely ratify our stand today, which is this House will ban tourism at sites considered sacred by locals. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to deliver a clear-cut definition of today's motion to further strengthen our stand. According to the English Oxford Dictionary, the word ban means to forbid or prohibit legally. In this case, banning tourism to places considered sacred by locals. The word tourism is used to express the commercial organization and operation of vacations and visits to places of interest. Sites refers to places. Considered means regarded or even believed to be. Sacred can be defined as very important and must be treated with respect. Lastly, locals can be interpreted as an inhabitant of a specific area. Thus, in a nutshell, today's motion means that the government would like to prohibit visitations of people for leisure or fun to places that are regarded as holy or must be respected by the natives or citizens of that specific country. We, the government, would like to specify the baseline of today, which is tourists are to be banned to sites considered holy by the locals as long as they are not going there for religious purposes, such as the pilgrimage to preserving the uniqueness and culture of the place. We reaffirm the stand that tourists are not the same as pilgrims and are to be excused from the ban as they are visiting the sacred sites because of religious duties. The pilgrim does not walk into a cathedral because it is a site, but because he believes God himself allows himself to be present between the pillars. The tourist walks into the same cathedral because he believes the culture is there, but what he does not recognize is that the culture is there because of the God and cannot be experienced in its fullness. The second-hand experience is not the same as the real experience. To see something because it is a sight is not to see it for precisely what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to my first argument, which is tourists do not respect the values that are associated and tied to the very foundations of the sacred sites. When we say sacred site, I am positive that almost all of you will refer to your places of worship. So it is safe to say that we would definitely hate the thought of the holiness of these places being tarnished by the dozens of foreign feet that will step inside it to just take pictures or generally disrespecting the structure. The most prominent example which hits us as Malaysians so close to home being the incident that involved 4 tourists stripping themselves into their birthday suits and posing for a picture on Mount Kinabalu, and that is revered as a sacred place to the locals despite knowing that doing such an act is an act of utmost disrespect to both locals and to our beloved country. This incident caused national and international outrage, ladies and gentlemen.
Joy,
Yes.
do you really think that we need to go to that far of extent to ban it, other than taking other measures to prohibit, to safeguard these things from happening?
My dear opposition, let me give you one answer. A few rotten apples spoil the whole bunch. It is better to cut off the head of the snake than to just let it fester. The locals are indefinitely sure that this was the product of angering their gods when an earthquake hit Sabah recently. It may sound ridiculous to some, but for locals they think otherwise. Yet, ladies and gentlemen, please put yourselves in their shoes. If somebody were to disrespect your places of worship in such a way, wouldn't you be angry, horrified, disgusted by the thought that such blatant disregard towards our way of life be revealed in such a way? Obviously, the violation of such acts are horrendous and implementing on the severity of the situation. The slandering of one's religion taking place in front of you by foreigners is not something to trifle with, as it can lead to humiliation on both our country and theirs. Did you know that startling statistics revealed to us by the University of Rome states that a whopping 79% of locals disagree on the usage of secret sites as tourist attractions because it can lead to misconduct and degradation of secret places as a whole. This proves that the topic proposed by the government today is valid and ensures that the main interests of the people are kept in check. And here, the opposition is stating that we shouldn't ban tourism to these sacred sites by totally disregarding the feelings and values that are tied to these sacred places. It is truly obvious that the people are going to get this short end of the stick here. We, the government, are merely doing our duty in ensuring that such things will not happen again by banning tourism to sites considered sacred by locals, because the interests of the people should always come before monetary or prolific gains, ladies and gentlemen. After all, the people are and will always be our country's most treasured asset. As time does not permit, allow me to conclude and summarize my argument. We, the government, full-heartedly agree with today's unbeatable motion, as it is better to cut off the head of the snake than to let them to beat about the bush doing so. In a short while, my Deputy Prime Minister will further strengthen our case. Members of the House, before I rest my case, allow me to reaffirm our stand that is, this House will ban tourism at sites considered sacred by locals as valid and truly eye-opening. And with that, I tip my hat and leave it to you.
Mrs. Speaker of the House, Precise Scientific, dear educators, my fellow colleagues, my fellow comrades, and not forgetting members of the floor. On this very fine day, our topic for debate is this House will ban tourism at sites considered sacred by the locals. Beforehand, let me define the motion for you. According to Merriam-Webster, the word ban is defined to prohibit something especially by legal means. But according to Federal Chambers Dictionary, tourism is the commercial organization and operation of holidays and journeys around a place, stopping at various places along the way. Sacred is something that must not be challenged or changed. Lastly, locals are the inhabitants of a particular place. In other words, the motion today means this House would officially prohibit tourism at places that must not be changed. We, the negative team, strongly oppose to this statement, saying with our stance today, this House will not ban tourism at sites considered sacred by the local, as it will leave an adverse impact towards the countries, especially in terms of economy. Instead, tourism should be regulated in order to preserve. Today, as the opposition leader, I will lay the foundation by explaining that by implementing this policy, it hides a community's culture and heritage. The deputy leader of the opposition team will build up the case by explaining on his other points, and the opposition will rebut and sum up our team's case. Ladies and gentlemen, we, the negative team, have the burden of proof, as we will be providing strong evidences to support our case. Before moving on to my point, allow me to rebut the points given by the Prime Minister of the government side. She stated that tourists do not respect the holiness of sacred sites. She also gave an example about the incident of tourists that strayed in Mount Kinabalu. Dear Mr. Speaker, these tourists are disrespecting the holiness of the place as their lack of acknowledgement. With enforcing laws and regulation, those incidents could be prevented. Mr. Speaker of the House, as mentioned, I will point out on how the act of banning tourism at sites considered sacred will hide the culture and the virtue of the sacred places, which will deflect the tourism itself. Malaysia is a unique country with its diversity of culture, the varieties of race, language, and religion. Malaysia is a living proof of how tolerance and harmony can be achieved in a country. In the eyes of the world, this is unique when other countries are suffering from racism and religious attacks. Thus, this gives a greater importance of education about religion's tolerance. and tourism is one of the way. If this house is going to ban tourism at secret sites, it will affect the tourism of the country, and Malaysia is well known for its cultural and heritage tourism. World Tourism Organization defines cultural tourism as the movement of a person for essentially cultural motivation, such as study tours, performing art and cultural tours, travels to festival and other related events. As quoted by National Assembly of States Art Agencies in 2005, cultural tourism is essentially based on the set of places, traditions, art forms, celebration, and experiences that portrays one nation and its people. Cultural vibrancy is clearly manifested in the ongoing and successful Malaysia Truly Asia, a promotional drive by the country's promotion arm, Tourism Asia. In this promotion, Malaysia boasts to host a wide variety of Asian ethnic groups, making it into Little Asia. Malaysia also has been distinctive multicultural architectural with strong Islamic, Buddhist, and Western influences, and all of them have been portrayed in the heritage building, different temples and sacred sites around the country. Tourism at religious or sacred sites is a special type of cultural heritage tourism. In fact, Ministry of Tourism and Arts of Malaysia has launched Islamic Tourism Program in 28th of March 2009. The program consists of visits to sacred sites and religious places throughout the country. Thus, by banning tourism, this program can be severely affected. In addition, the sacred sites acts as an attraction for the development of Islamic tourism program, which has roughly contributed around 1,994,875,000 in 2005 and expected to achieve 2,592,900,000 in 2020 based on 2015 annual report of GFS. Accepted.
Thank you. Your definition on culture is very superficial and is only regarded towards sacred sites, whereas the country has more to offer, more than just culture and sacred sites such as the clothing. And tourism and cultural tourism is different than tourism and sacred sites. Thank you.
I will explain on that throughout my speech. First, let me get back into my speech. What is achieved by banning these sacred sites? Moving on to the second part of my point, cultural values will be depreciated when the policy is implemented. Sacred is something that must not be challenged or changed. Therefore, it is considered as a heritage. In fact, not only the sacred sites are considered as a heritage, but the virtues that comes with it and the value of religion is also considered as a heritage. Accepted. Tourists come to these sacred spaces in order to be enriched and information about the culture of places, and sacred sites are mostly associated with historical and religious means. Thus, when the sacred sites are banned from tourism, the sacred sites could be forgotten as they are unexposed for tourism. If the policy is implemented, the heritage is hidden. According to the Oxford Dictionary, heritage is a property and an inheritance and is not meant to be hidden. By banning tourism, it limits the limitation of these sites. As an example, Ellora Caves in India shows a great proof of how architecture exists since the ancient time. But in 2009 and until 2011, it was banned from tourism. The future generations might not acknowledge the existence of these sacred places. It also limits the amount of knowledge obtained by its worshippers from other countries, as they are the reference book that only exists in such places. One of the examples is where Jewish text records are kept in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Not only that, tourism is a major factor for cultural and religious activities. When there are more people in a particular region, specifically the area around sacred sites, religious and cultural celebrations tend to take place in bigger scale. In other words, tourism in these places are a major source of support for dancers, musicians, and artists, and to those who earn their livings throughout the shows for the festivals. Without the commercialization, how this group of people will survive? In addition, this will also give a detrimental cultural impact, as it will lead to the sort of cultural activities. Again, all of this happens if sacred sites are to be banned and hidden. With all the points given, this is how banning hides the virtue of the sacred places, which indirectly affect tourism of the country, and how culture would be appreciated when the policy is implemented. With that, the opposition team strongly believes that the motion should not stand. With that, I rest my case.
Applying the article to the sustainable wise board of educators, as
which had been rebutted by the first speaker of the opposition team. She attacked the analogy given by my first speaker about the Mount Kinabalu incident, telling that they are doing so because they are lack of knowledge of these sacred sites. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to highlight again that that is why we are banning tourism at sacred sites, because they don't have any knowledge about the sacred sites and they are not respecting it.
That's fine, ma'am.
Yes.
So how do you expect all those people from out of the country to actually learn about it, to acknowledge it as a sacred site and preserve it, to understand to preserve it, if you're going to ban it from them?
Thank you. Let us be learning from the locals first before going to those sacred sites. There is no need for them. Now I would like to rebut the arguments brought upon by the first speaker of the opposition. She told that tourism at sites considered sacred by locals should not be banned because it will hide a community's culture. Ladies and gentlemen, a culture can never be learned only by visiting sacred sites. Culture is a general thing that can be learned by learning lifestyle about the locals. Not only that, she also mentioned that by banning tourism at sites considered sacred, these sacred sites will be forgotten. But let me tell you something, it will never be forgotten by the locals. It is a sacred site for them. How can they forget it? There is no chance tonight.
That's fine, ma'am.
Tonight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to move on to my first argument to convince the House about the motion for today, which is sacred sites should be banned. Tourism at sacred sites should be banned in order to stop contamination. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine yourself in a sacred site considered sacred by you, and others come and contaminate your sacred site. Won't you feel angry? Won't you feel disappointed? I'm very sure you will feel so. That goes the same to the locals who consider sites as sacred and other tourists come and contaminate it. They felt upset and unhappy just the way you do. We as the government definitely do not want to disrespect the emotions of the locals, and that is why we have taken the effective way by banning tourism at sacred sites. Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, sacred sites should be kept clean, and it is a pure and holy place. And basically, that is what the locals are trying to do. But the tourist is been disrupting the cleanliness of these sacred sites. Yes.
So the government is basically implementing this ban because they have failed to regulate these things from happening. So is this your excuse for these things that has happened?
Thank you. We as the government have taken many steps to control this from happening, but it is not taken into the tourist account. And now we because all the steps we have taken is not effective, and we are now taking another effective way tonight. Even the rules and laws set up by the government are not taken into account by tourists, just as what I stated just now. Tourists must not drift upon the sacred sites of the locals lightly. As an analogy, I would like to talk about the Pasir, which is a well-known temple, which is also known as one of the sacred sites by the Hindus in Malaysia. The well-known temple is open for tourists from all around the world. But tourists sometimes fail to dress up decently, as it is a law enforced by the temple management to show the purity of this temple. However, ladies and gentlemen, tourists do not take the rules seriously, and some were even charged in the court for indecent behavior and dressing, which eventually disappointed the management and as well as the local. Therefore, after a good discussion, we, the government, had set up a new constitution by banning the tourism at sites. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to move on to a second argument, which is tourism tourism in sacred sites disrupts the peace in sacred sites. Usually, in many sacred places, ritual activities are done because those sites are considered holy. But when a large number of tourists enter a sacred place, the peaceful environment of these sites is being destroyed, especially when a particular site is small and narrow. This makes the locals difficult to carry out their rituals in a harmonious manner. And this involves emotions of the locals as well. Locals do feel proud to showcase their historical and sacred sites to others. But when tourists tend to break the calmness, locals feel annoyed and unhappy. Hence, as a responsible government, we had come up with an effective way by banning tourism in sacred sites. Besides, maintaining the peaceful and harmonious environment is one of the ways that the locals practice in order to show their respect towards those sacred sites. Thus, the government had rules to maintain such a situation. But when tourists visit the sacred sites, those rules are not followed. And that is why we, the government, had come out with a most appropriate step by banning tourism at sacred sites. Before I rest my case, I would like to reaffirm the government's stand for today, which is tourism at sites considered sacred by locals should be banned. My third speaker will further prove how worthless the opposition is to oppose the motion for today by rebutting all the arguments brought forward by them. Thus, today's motion will stand and therefore will hold water.
Today, as side opposition and as the second opposition leader, I'm here to tell you that why should we oppose this motion and why this motion should not stand. But before moving on in my points, I would like to rebut the points put forth by side government. Now, first speaker, we have brought up that incident that happened in Mount Kinabalu and say that tourists does not respect values that is presented by these sacred sites. Now, if we really regard something as sacred, locals will have the responsibility to protect it from being obstructed and eroded by the context of culture and tradition. We do not have to go to the extent of banning it, and therefore we should actually regulate it in order to preserve further the culture and tradition presented by these sacred places. And Mount Kinabalu, it happened in 2015. 2 years later, after regulations and regulations and regulations. Have you ever heard of any new news about something in Mount Kinabalu again? Accepted, sir.
Well, you said that it was the responsibility of the locals to ensure that this doesn't happen. But we are talking about mass tourism here. We're not talking about one or two individuals.
Yes, I get the point. You see? Alright, mass tourism. That comes under my point, and I will elaborate it to rebut the POI put forth by the government with. Now, moving on to the second speaker. You said that locals will actually get angry and be pissed off because tourists comes in and they disrupt their religion practices. That can be simply eradicated by applying regulations, like what they do to hospitals. Why not brainstorm a way to rectify this problem? Now, when they are praying or practicing their religion, why not prohibit them from entering? Whereas open up to the public after those praying hours. That is setting up regulation, not the impulsive act of banning something just because it causes something very minimal to the culture and tradition of the sacred sites. Now, before I move on to my points, I would like to strengthen my case made by my side and by the opposition leader. She had made a point stating that culture is meant to be preserved, not to be hidden. And by banning it, we are hiding it from the outside world, from the eye of the world. And by banning it we limit the exposure of the sacred sites to the outside world. And what happens if we ban it? The outside world will not acknowledge the fact that we have sacred sites existing in place in our nation. And if one does not acknowledge and does not have the knowledge that something exists, how can we preserve it? Why is there a need to preserve it when nobody knows it exists? And yes, it is the locals' responsibility, but not only the locals' responsibility, nice sir. Since it is a sacred place and is considered a heritage, it belongs to the world. And it is the duty of the world's citizens to preserve the culture, not only locals. Now, moving on to my point that I'm going to put forth to strengthen my point's case. Firstly, economy will be hugely affected. Now, our current economy is very declining right now. It's not very strong. The status is, I can't even talk about it. Now, to improve this current situation, the government has actually put targets that we need to achieve this year, okay? And tourism is no exception from these targets. Now, the quoting from statistic that we have obtained from tourismmalaysia.gov.my, it's an official tourism website. It stated that we are to expect a big jump in our tourism industry because our government has set up a target. By this year, we are targeting 118 million ringgit of income generated by these tourists. And yes, it's
We are banning tourism
only
as
sacred
sites. I get your point. Alright, only on sacred sites. Now we are meeting this goal. We are meeting this goal. We have a big jump to, we have this, that gap is very long, it is very big. And we should consider all the factors that we can take to meet our goals. And by banning tourism at any place is not going to help us. It is only by banning it, we are only decapitating ourselves from reaching that goal. Hence, the government is digging up their own grave so that they won't reach that goal at all. Now, if they ban it, shops will close. People lose jobs. People, the employment rate goes down and takes a hike. And the economy finally diminishes and will eventually crash. Now, if you get the point and see the effects of the banning of these sites have actually has actually affected our economy, you will know that there is no need to ban tourism in sacred sites. Because with relevance to my second point, we can rectify this problem by rules and regulations. And by rules and regulations, I mean, why amputate an affected leg when you can simply medicate it? You can simply apply medication to it. Why cut down a tree when it has overgrown branches, when you can just cut down the overgrown branches and not cut down the tree? We can curb the situation by rules and regulations. For example, Mount Kinabalu. Mount Kinabalu, actually after that naked incident, we have actually enforced laws, dress codes, penal codes, everything to ensure nobody strips naked and bears it up for a camera again. And therefore, this doesn't only happens in Malaysia, it happens all over the country, all over the world. In Chiang Mai, they prohibit the entrance of tourists only during their meditation to provide silence for their religious practices. And they are open to the public at times other than that meditation period. So if we do go to the extent of banning it, we are actually causing detrimental effects to our economy, and actually by regulating it, we can just preserve it as the same way as we will ban it. So there is no need to ban it because we will not reach our big jump in the tourism industry, our target this year, and the education and exposure to the world will be limited. And therefore, I'd like to close my case and then let my rebut all the points put forth by side government.
Wise House, I, as the speaker for today, full-heartedly agree with today's strong motion set up by the government, which states that this House will ban tourism at sites considered sacred by the locals. First and foremost, I would like to rebut the very weak arguments presented by the opposition team. As a whole, ladies and gentlemen, the opposition team is just trying to prioritize tourists and rather disregard the fact of the feelings of the locals. They are putting a higher expectation on the tourists who are coming in and disregarding the respect, the love and the culture which has been there for thousands of years. Thus, tourists who come into the country have only violated the place and has only caused more problems, which has stated by my first and second speaker. Moving on to the first speaker of the opposition team. She claimed that by having tourism at sites considered sacred, one will be able to learn culture and one will be able to experience a wide range of culture. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to highlight something that sacred sites are only a part and parcel of culture. It is not culture as a whole. There's still a lot of other means to learn culture. Their definition of culture is rather superficial and has proven that they have been really narrow-minded. To only consider the fact that tourism at sites can only contribute, is the only sole contributor to culture is rather ridiculous. Yes.
But don't you think culture itself, religion itself, is something that's much important to culture?
Thank you. Religion is important to culture, but the fact that you're considering it as a main part of culture is rather Thank you. Next, I would like to also address that she said that once it will be banned, it will be forgotten. I would like to highlight here that if it is banned, it will never be forgotten until the locals are still there. The locals are the ones who will be initiating the place, who will be preserving the place in order for it to be stable. The tourists who come there might not be aware, but it is still not forgotten. The word forgotten has a heavy meaning here, ladies and gentlemen. And if you were to disregard the fact that the locals are still there, then it's rather shameful on the opposition. Yes.
But don't you think the world needs to know about those cultural and religious sites that's there?
Thank you. There's still a lot of ways to learn about such sacred sites. We are not only enforcing them to go to sacred sites. There's always 101 million ways to learn about sacred sites. We are living in an era of technology where we have information out of normal experiences. We can have such wonderful experiences without even experiencing it. So it does not only mean that when you experience it hands-on, it is rather inappropriate for you to claim that it's only proper for you to use it hands-on. Yes.
Now, according to my peers, your first speaker has stated that second-hand experience is not the same as your own experience. So how can you say that through books we can learn the same thing than when we visit it?
Again, your definition for experience is rather superficial. Experience does not only have to do with sight. It can have knowledgeable experiences. It can have emotional experiences. Thus, you're rather proving that you are rather myopic opposition. Denied. Next, I would like to also reaffirm that that they have been all this while battling it out, that they are prioritizing the tourists and disregarding the fact that the locals are, and the motion for today states that the locals who have considered sites sacred should be reinforced here. Next, I would also like to rebut the fact that the second speaker of the opposition was too hasty in listening to my POIs. He did not have the patience to actually analyze and interpret my POIs. He also made a case. This clearly shows that the opposition is rather hasty in making decisions. They also have disregarded the fact that they claim that the locals have the responsibility to actually to actually enforce laws to actually prohibit tourists from doing such acts. But ladies and gentlemen, again, we are talking about mass tourism. We are not talking about just an individual who violates the laws. How can the helpless locals have the power and willpower to go against hundreds of, or if not millions of tourists who come to that place? Just because, and she also claimed that there have been cases from 2015 to 2017 which have not been, there's no sign of any Mount Kinabalu experiences. Again, ladies and gentlemen, just because it doesn't go unreported, it doesn't mean that it's not exist. They clearly show lack of empathy and love towards sacred sites. Next, I would also the second speaker of the opposition team also claimed that it would be a boost to the economy if we were to not ban locals. Again, ladies and gentlemen, a boost to the economy. And economy is a very wide subject. It also consists of exports and imports of the country, agriculture, not only solely on sacred sites, or not only solely on tourism at sacred sites. Of course, tourism can be beneficial to the country, but just because by banning a small part of a sacred site, it doesn't mean that you will disregard the fact that the economy is important. It is just like cutting off an appendix from a person. If it's there and if it's not there, it's still the same. There's no much difference towards the economic side. Next, I would also like to address the fact that we do not disregard the fact that tourism is important to the people, because we are the first speaker of the government has clearly stated that we are banning tourists, not pilgrims. Pilgrims still have the opportunity to go into the country. There will still be money flow into the country. So it's rather narrow-minded for the opposition to claim that there will not be economical growth in the country.
Guys,
Yes.
but you think that pilgrims do come under tourist visa, thus they are considered as tourists also.
Thank you. It clearly shows that she hasn't done her homework properly, because under the Indian visa embassy, it clearly states for the purpose of visas such as tourist or if not pilgrimage. So there's a clear difference. Next, I would like to counter-attack the second speaker's point based on my second speaker's point, which states that contamination, there is no exact economic flow if the place is contaminated. This is because the government has to come up with sufficient funds to clear the place. Thus, there's no net flow of currency into the country. If we were to spend each and every single dollar into cleaning up the mess that they have left behind for the locals, then there will not be enough economic flow into the country. Thus, why not just ban it for a whole sake? It's just going back to square one if we were to clean the whole place again. Thus, I believe that by the first speaker and the second speaker of the government have clearly proven that today's motion should stand, will stand, and can stand. And it is clearly proven that the opposition have only beaten around the bush by only addressing the advantages of visiting tourism sites, but has not given us a proper argument to actually not ban the tourism sites considered sacred by locals. Thus, only proving that the government has the right to agree with this topic. I, as a third speaker, would like to reaffirm my stand, which states that this House will ban tourism at sites considered sacred by locals. Thank you.
Destination indicator, precise timekeepers, my loyal teammates, members of the floor, and not forget my worthy opponents, but much was said. Now, let me go on into saying about the rebuttals of our opposition. Now, first of all, first they talked about tourists don't respect the values in sacred sites. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they also stated that it's being tarnished and because of their shattering and taking pictures. And also they gave up evidences talking about the naked trips. Now, when given a POI saying, don't you think regulation is better to actually get over this problem? They answered it back by saying it's better to cut down the roots of a branch, cut down the roots of a tree than the branches itself that is being rocked. Or in other words, the rotten apples of a basket can actually spoil the whole bunch. Now you see, ladies and gentlemen, they also gave up evidence saying that 79% disagree because this agree to the fact that these places should be used as tourism because it can lead to destructive activities. Now here you go my rebuttal. It can lead, let's listen to the word properly, it can lead if you don't have proper regulation, if you do not enforce regulation. See, ladies and gentlemen, all of the things that were stated out by our government here is actually being able to be prevented. We can prevent it through the enforcement of regulation. You see, ladies and gentlemen, locals are all getting pissed off because the wrong things that are going around in secret places because of the fact there's no regulation there. For example, let's take up naked trips. Yes, it did happen in 2015. Through regulation, yes, they were no more reported. Now, how can you say it does not, it still exists if there's no reports of it anymore? For me, what I would say is, if it does not exist, there should not be any reports. And if it exists, there should be reports. But for the past 2 years, have we heard any? No. So ladies and gentlemen, that shows that the government has been always speaking of the past. And what is going on right now, they're not even giving a hindsight to it at all. Moving on. But when we understand this, we understand that why is there a need for us to amputate a leg or a body part of us when there's a small wound that can be treated? You see, we, the opposition, have come up and tell you, through regulations, these are all possible. Or through regulation, we can able to preserve all things that are sacred to the locals. But the government is keep on coming and saying, no, regulations are not good. Regulations are not good. Give me, what I would ask of the government to give us is evidence on how regulation has actually decreased the sacredness and how regulation has actually bring out a much more detrimental effect upon that place. Before going on into the next point, yes.
Thank you. It is rather human nature for any human being to at least violate any of the laws. Thus, such laws have proven to be ineffective, and this is why we are banning tourism at sacred sites.
Now, when we go into a temple, we understand that it is the law for us to take off our slippers. But when seeing that as a law, is it our human nature or is it our human instinct to put on our shoes while we're going to the temples? No, ladies and gentlemen, we don't. Which is what I'm saying here, that these laws, when enforced about all of this, tourists are bound to listen. These people are visitors. They don't come here and walk about everything that is their own. Now, moving on, ladies and gentlemen. Now, they also stated, in one of the POIs, they say that tourism, religious sites are not associated with cultural tourism. Well, ladies and gentlemen, www.cultureofmalaysia.com, which is a legitimate place of website that you can go to check out of all the things on all the religious sites that are in Malaysia. So, how are you able to say that it is not associated with cultural tourism? Now, the second government also stated that we rebutted us by saying that it's hiding when we stated that it's hiding the community of culture, the cultural community. Well, they stated that when they said that, they said the culture can only be learned through the lives, of people. Now, let's give it a small thing. Let's think about this for a while. The lives of people also include them going to these religious places to learn and pray and also know more about their religion. How does one not know the lives of a person by not going to the religious place that they go to? You see, it is also through learning. Education also happens there when you also see what a local does. And a local also goes to his temple, goes to his mosque, goes to his church. And also, the point that was given by the second speaker of the government was saying that the calmness of the whole place would be affected. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'm going to give you evidence. You see, in California, which is there's a church called California Catholic Mission Santa Barbara that actually says and actually shows that there are visiting hours. And the church actually closes down during praying hours. So in that way, the locals are not disturbed by anything. In that way, the sacredness of the place is not being eroded by any way. See, visiting hours are there while the people are not being disturbed. And the people are there while the tourist people are not getting let in. You see, that's how good people do, you know. That's how they bring up their way of tourism into these places. There are two separate times for tourism to happen and also for prayer to happen. Both of it does not come together. And we understand that. And that is why regulations such as this is being allowed. Moving on, the third government also stated about the opposition not caring about the feelings. We are helping them. How, you might ask? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are helping them through the economical growth also. You see, when we are doing development around those places, we are also giving them those development, those facilities. You see, when you are going to those places, when you are going to a temple, you will obviously need places to eat. You will obviously need places to maybe relax and leisure yourself. And you also need places to actually get your offerings. And those are all happening due to the facilities and everything that's going around that place also. So how is the government saying that we are not looking into the public interest of the locals? Now, the last thing they say that economy is not drastically affected. Ladies and gentlemen, don't you think 118 billion is actually important to our economy? How is that not important? There's so much of money flow that's getting in because of these tourist people. But the government is saying it's not drastically affected. Don't you think that's logical? It's not logical, ladies and gentlemen. And they also went on into saying that contamination is there due to these tourists. Ladies and gentlemen, tourists come there. Yes. They do litter. Yes. Through regulation? No, they don't. Because when regulation is being enforced, these tourist people are bound to follow it. These tourist people are bound to listen to the rule that's being put for the people that are there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to just